Good morning, everyone. We will call to order today, August 23rd, 2023, the Special Committee on Reducing Red Tape. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman, I'm sorry, Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Okay. Alderman Narayan.
Here.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanye. Chair Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Sanye. We have 5 present. You have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We should approve the minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from Thursday, June 29th committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I have to call.
You want to call the roll?
Yes.
Of course. All right, let's call it.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. Chair Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Sanye. We have 5 aye votes.
Excellent. Okay. The vision for today, we're going to have a board bill introduced, Board Bill 60, for a topic of discussion and public hearing purposes. Just so everyone knows from a housekeeping perspective, if you are joined, public, members of the public, businesses, the like, and who you're representing, please do raise your hand if you'd like to speak on this topic. And the clerk, right, Tracy, will move you to a panelist position and then call on you in order that your hand was raised.
That's correct, and you will be sworn in as
You
well.
will be sworn in as well at the time you're called on to give testimony. But the sponsor is going to give a quick introduction first, and then he will defer to any specific speakers he would like to give testimony on Board Bill 60. And then we will move to a discussion of the committee members, back and forth questions of the sponsor and any of his speakers. And then we will move to members of the public, at which time we will then wrap up. According to Rule 34, I do need to kind of read something to everyone listening who would like to speak, that the initial presentation can be no longer than 5 minutes. I would like to try to keep that to 3 minutes, but and so we can keep the meeting moving and have enough time to hear from everybody. And that the witnesses will be sworn in, and you can also submit written testimony to the committee at any time to the conclusion of this hearing. So please feel free to do that, and we can ensure that it's a matter of record in the committee minutes. So with that,
And Alderman Oldenburg, we'll go, once we submit, or once people want to have their public comment, we'll go in order for and opposed, right? Or is that, or you just want all the testimony all at once?
well, I don't know, Madam Clerk, that's a good point of traffic directing here. Do you want folks, as they raise their hand, to say whether they're opposed or in support of, or are you just wanting to go through randomly in the order that they've selected their hand?
I would prefer if they would let me know if they're
Yeah.
for or against, so I could have that on record.
It's a great point. So if you are members of the public or anyone who wants to give testimony at this public hearing, please do pop into the chat whether you are in favor and support of or opposed to Board Bill 60 with your given testimony. That way, you're right. I believe you're correct, Alderwoman Velasquez, the Rule 34 does indicate we need to go back and forth. So we'll try to do that as best as we can. We don't have as many supporters or opponents, I guess we just live with the order we have, but that would be great.
I'm happy to keep time, Alderman.
I appreciate that perfectly. Okay, without further ado, Alderman Ryan, the chair recognizes you and the committee will listen to your introduction to Board Bill 60.
Thank you, Chairman Oldenburg, members of the committee here. Board Bill 60 is a pretty simple amendment to our existing liquor code. And what it does is it changes the plot petition requirement for restaurants. I want to be very clear about this. This is simply for restaurants. It makes no changes whatsoever to the requirements for nightclubs or the requirements for packaged liquor stores. Additionally, we're defining restaurant as a place with a square footage of less than 5,000 square feet, where 50% or more of the sales are done in food. So I imagine today we're going to hear about some of the places that we've seen, particularly downtown, where we've had problems with some, I'll say, rogue operators. None of those places were less than 5,000 square feet and doing more than 50% of their sales in food, which I think is a really important jumping off point here, because or else the whole conversation is going to go off the rails with something that we're not even actually talking about. I do not want to make it easier for someone to start a nightclub. I do not want to make it easier for someone to create a new packaged liquor store. What I do want is for people to, for it to be easier for a restaurateur, a bona fide restaurateur, to open up a restaurant in the city of St. Louis and to stay afloat. We've often seen at various restaurants, I'm sure throughout our wards, that there's a gap when a restaurant opens, particularly a smaller restaurant. The chains seem to manage this okay, but your mom and pop shops oftentimes will really struggle for sometimes 4, 5, 6 months while they are trying to get their liquor licensing in place. And when we've spoken to various restaurateurs throughout the city, we've heard over and over that restaurants are hoping to basically cut even on food sales, and where their profits are is really in wine and beer. And a lot of people want to have a glass of wine or a beer with their meal. And this is a hurdle that only exists in the city of St. Louis. This hurdle does not exist in the county. And we're missing out over and over. I can't tell you how many times I hear someone say, oh, well, downtown, I work downtown, and now the only thing to get downtown is a sandwich. There's not a real restaurant to go to downtown anymore. It's because we've created huge hurdles for them. And if you're a restaurateur, you're going to open up in Clayton. You're going to be dealing with the same clientele without these frankly archaic hurdles. And we're seeing that over and over with the kind of foodie type restaurants, the concept restaurants. They're opening up in the county. They're opening up in Richmond Heights. They're opening up in Clayton. They're opening up in Maplewood, because when you know that your restaurant's only going to be, hip, slick, and cool for a year and a half or so, and that's the model, you don't want to spend 6 months getting a liquor license. And again, these restaurants that are less than 5,000 square feet, that are doing more than 50% of their sales in food, are not the problem that we're hearing about over and over. I spoke in depth with Commissioner McDonnell about this. He said, no, these are not the issue. It's the nightclubs that are the issue. It's the large places, and it's the places that are not selling food. Additionally, this Board Bill 60 actually gives the commissioner more authority to enforce existing liquor laws if there's an act of violence or other issues on or around a licensed premises. This board bill gives the commissioner the authority in his sole discretion to suspend that liquor license for up to 72 hours. So with some of the places that we were seeing downtown, where we were seeing an issue at least once a week, every instance that we saw, that liquor license could have been suspended for 72 hours. And I can tell you, if you're a rogue actor and you're trying to run a nightclub, run a packaged liquor store, and you're getting your liquor license suspended for 72 hours anytime that there's an incident, you're not going to be in business very long. You're going to be suspended 3/4 of the month. You're not going to be able to pay rent. You're going to have to find a different line of work. And that's what this is about. This is about both increasing the enforcement on the back end, as well as making it easier for people who choose to do business in the city of St. Louis to get a piece of the American dream. And oftentimes we've seen that's the mom and pop restaurant. I do know that Director Coyle has to push out of here shortly. So I do want to make sure that we have a chance to hear from him, if that's all right with you, Chairman.
Sure. Do you want to, let's get him, we don't need to swear in city officials, at least in my mind.
No,
so-
we do not swear in.
Great. So Commissioner Coyle, why don't you take the floor, and then we'll go through the committee members with any questions they might have of either you and or the sponsor. Sound good?
Perfect.
Wonderful.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Oldenburg and members of the committee for holding this hearing today on the process of streamlining our liquor application process. My name is Charles Coyle. I serve as the Director of Public Safety. I want to use this opportunity to briefly update you on the progress with Excise Division backlog and address a few key provisions of Board Bill 60. As you all know, the process for restaurants and bars to obtain a liquor license in the city of St. Louis is lengthy, especially in comparison to other local jurisdictions. Our process can take 6 to 9 months from start to finish and requires the restaurant owner to go door to door to collect signatures, which we have to verify. Both signature collection and validation can create significant delays and is out of step with the regional and national best practices. When I started in this role, excise was immediately flagged for me as an area that needed assistance. In March, I assigned 2 additional officers to review signatures, reducing the backlog in applications from 30 to 5, and presently the backlog is 0. Soon after I started, we put out a bid and received applications for additional hearing officers. Those contracts passed the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, allowing us to move forward with additional hearing officers. While these changes have helped, they are not the comprehensive changes needed to restructure the process in a way that supports business, addresses neighborhood concerns, or smooths the operational inefficiencies. Board Bill 60 will allow us to move forward and modernize our process. I want to address 2 key areas of the legislation. First, this bill eliminates the plat process for restaurants. This applies only to restaurants, but it will allow us to do 2 very important things. We will be able to ease the burden on restaurant owners to collect signatures. The process that is resource intensive and does not lead to a robust community feedback, and we will reduce the red tape of signature verifications, a lengthy process that is inefficient and burdensome to staff. We will continue to ensure public feedback. Under this legislation, we will post notice of the restaurant's intention to seek a license visibility for neighbors and on our website, and hold open hearings in front of the Excise Commissioner. Community members will have the opportunity to have their voices heard. Second, this bill gives the Excise Commissioner new emergency powers. In contrast to the often lengthy process we currently have to revoke a license, under this bill, the Excise Commissioner will have the ability to temporarily suspend a license up to 72 hours. This will allow us to more nimbly address security concerns and keep neighbors safe while giving the business the opportunity to quickly change or face revocation. This bill is a work in progress, and we support the work of Alderman Naraya to modernize this important process. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the testimony and answering any questions that I can.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Coyle. Appreciate that. Let's roll through the committee now with any statements or questions that we might have. We'll go in order of seniority here. Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just weigh in here real quickly on the front end and say that I'm, grateful that we're considering ways to make it easier to open businesses in the city of St. Louis. I think that this committee is well-founded, and I'm grateful for the work that we're considering here. That being said, I appreciate, the consideration as to why businesses are leaving downtown in the city, but I think the city has a whole lot of other issues related to those, the needs of businesses, including crime and nuisance businesses and other things. And, I'm really hopeful that as a part of this, looking at the jurisdiction of our excise commissioner is important, but we have failed to really exercise the authority that we have in that office for a long time. And I'm wanting to hear from, members of the general public here. I know I've gotten a lot of letters here, and while I really, really commend the sponsor here for wanting to break down barriers for businesses, I just want to say on the front end how very concerned I am about the history of nuisance liquor license holders, the members of the community that have been held hostage by businesses that have not been respectful of public safety in a general sense. And I also just want to mention that I think that we've got to be really careful when we compare to St. Louis County, because in St. Louis County, most restaurants and bars are very far, geographically speaking, from neighbors and homeowners. And that's just not the case here in the city. You'll see a neighborhood bar or restaurant just right up next door to someone's house. And that's a very different situation than what you've got in St. Louis County. So there's very different considerations here. And I'm really grateful, to hear that we're not, that we're going to be taking this in a longer view and not necessarily making decisions today. But I just wanted to weigh in on some of those things on the front end, because they're so important as we consider hearing from the public and consider moving forward with a significant change to our liquor licensing. So I'm hopeful as we consider these changes, we also consider some of the other considerations that are, propelling businesses out of our downtown area and out of our city, including the crime and nuisance businesses and unchecked liquor license holders, some of which are operating today selling liquor without a liquor license. And these things are very worrisome for me. And I think we've got to get our ducks in order on those things as we move forward with this. And I'll leave it to the general public at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the sponsor for bringing this issue forward.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Mr. Narayan, we sponsor. So next in seniority would be Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Thank you. I don't have any questions at this time. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing from our public, our community stakeholders, neighbors. I'm also interested in hearing from, hopefully, staff from the excise division, because there are different roles I think that they play in this that I've heard have not been heard in this process, and so we look at it differently. So I didn't see any of them on the call. I didn't see that on the agenda, but hopefully we'll hear from them as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's a great point. The Chairman McDonald, Commissioner McDonald could not make today, but there are going to be other opportunities. So just by way of a public service announcement, September 11th, there will be another meeting, a public hearing to be held on this issue at 6 p.m. an evening meeting. The place is yet to be determined. but there will be another opportunity for plenty of weigh-in from the public and from others. So that's a great point. If any committee members want to hear specifically from someone, please email me or the sponsor or the vice chair, and we'll ensure that those folks are attending the next public hearing. And to Alderwoman Spencer's point, just I discussed this with the sponsor and others. There will be plenty of conversation and opportunity for additional feedback and input. There will be no vote today, so I do want to make sure that's just crystal clear. Next is Alderwoman Keys is absent or conflicted. Vice Chair Velasquez.
Yep, thank you, Alderman Ryan, for bringing this forward. Just one question, if you have the data, because I would like to hear from some business owners, and it looks like we have some in the virtual room. But how much does this process, how we have it now, you mentioned it took 6 months for a business owner. How much does it typically cost with just, I've heard various things of having to hire consultants because our process here in the city is, particularly complex. How much does it cost, and how does that compare to other places around the region?
So thank you for that question. I can tell you in the city of St. Louis, it is incredibly expensive. A lot of that expense depends on the specific layout of the area surrounding the restaurant, because sometimes you have issues where people live 3 and 4 floors above on the edge of the radius, and you do have to. It's essentially a race to 51% of the signatures. So if you have the means to do so, this is why we never see chain restaurants struggle to get a liquor license, because they hire. There are firms who specialize in this, and if you hire them, you can navigate through this. Where it's particularly burdensome, I think, is on the small restaurateur, the mom and pop shop, the immigrant restaurant, trying to navigate this, particularly if there's any language barrier whatsoever. I think it becomes an extraordinarily high burden for people. And one of the issues there is we know that when we're trying to grow the population of the city of St. Louis, over and over, we've talked about increasing the immigrant population here in the city. And we know that one of the first lines of business that immigrant populations go into is restaurants. We've done a lot of great work in the city when it comes to, kind of language outreach in general, whether it's the Bosnian community, the Afghan community, the Vietnamese community. Over the years, we've I think done a decent job at that. But this is a huge burden there. And so you basically have to then hire one of these law firms who specializes in this. And when you crunch the numbers there, what I've been told by some of these restaurateurs and some of the firms who specialize in this, it can actually be cheaper to get a liquor license to run a restaurant in Manhattan than it is in the city of St. Louis, which just does not add up with the cost of living or the amount of money that one could anticipate making as a result of that licensure. And so we want to streamline this process. And again, I think it's important to note that this is for small restaurants under 5,000 square feet. If you've been in a nightclub that's under 5,000 square feet, I don't think anyone would be having a fun time there. That'd be pretty tight. And you have to have more than 50% of your sales from food. And if you aren't meeting those goals, the liquor commissioner, the excise commissioner, will revoke your permit. I mean, it's that simple. And this gives him broader discretion. I look forward to him testifying on the 11th, because I've worked with him so extensively on this. And his office is so in favor of this because of the additional enforcement authority that it gives them. And I hope that when he discusses this, it does alleviate some of the concerns that I'm seeing pop up in the comments, because he's saying finally a way to enforce some of these things that have been on the books. This gives me the authority to actually do something. So I'm hoping to both ease the burden and to make it easier for the excise commissioner to come and slap someone on the back end if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you. I've got one question and one more comment after this. Do you have a list, or can you provide us, or even at the next hearing, of how many of these restaurants under 5,000 square feet we have? And even if we have them by, neighborhood breakdown or a map?
I could talk to the building division and see if that's something that's in their current permitting, that if they're tracking the square footage of restaurants specifically at this time. I can't guarantee that I can get it, but if it exists currently, then I will do my best to get it to you.
Great. I think that would be helpful to give us some additional context. And just one more comment, I think, to the folks out here who are here to testify. I see some folks are, opposed in parts, but I think it would be helpful for us to hear, which parts of the bill, if you have, if you don't for it or against it, but if you have specific things that if it had this, it might be better for your neighborhood, or I think that's helpful for the committee to hear as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Alderwoman. Last but certainly not least, Alderwoman Saunier.
Hi, Chair and members of the committee. So at first, I just want to start by saying how grateful I am that these conversations are happening, and I want to commend Alderman Orion for his important work on this bill. I know even like during campaign season, and I think there's been a lot of conversations about the ways that whether intentionally or unintentionally, that the city serves as a barrier rather than an asset when folks are trying to do business in our communities and in our wards. In my brief time as alder, I've gotten to observe what works well and also, what could be improved. I definitely want to say, in the 4 months that I've been here, I have seen our current excise process, and I've seen some of the ways that it can be subjective and arbitrary, especially for smaller restaurants that are trying to open. I had a personal experience as I've gotten to work and build with business owners within the 7th Ward and even outside of the 7th Ward, of people who flat out were dealing with issues of, racism, redlining, and to be even more honest, a lot of steering of Black-owned and Brown-owned businesses away from certain neighborhoods and parts of our communities that ends up leaving them without the same resources and ends up with a lot of their doors closed before they've even been able to officially open. While as Alderwoman, I've been able to help with some of these barriers and things in place and backlogs with a phone call to a commissioner or director, helping to facilitate some conversations that needed to happen. I recognize that this is a point of position of privilege, and that it's not something that all of our residents, have access to and are able to do. I've met business owners who've had to pay, a consultant $5,000 or more for a signature collection. I have many immigrant and international business owners within the ward that I have the honor of representing, and they have difficulties navigating the processes that are in place. Again, these are processes that as their alderwoman, I'm able to step in and help them to navigate when they arise, but we need to have processes and systems that eliminate these challenges rather than relying on individuals. I have friends that have went through this process and have experienced just, again, flat out systematic racism when they're going through their application process and things like that. And so I see this board bill as the beginning, as the start of addressing some of these issues and some of these shortcomings. I want to just re-emphasize what was said earlier, that this does not apply to bars and nightclubs, as some of the emails I've received have suggested. And I'd even suggest that there's been a lot of misinformation out there about this bill, just according to the emails that I've seen. But what does seem clear to me is that, this process needs to be made easier. It needs to be made clear. I also want to emphasize that this also does not apply to gas stations or convenience stores, because that's another thing that has come up over and over again. So I want to make sure that I'm addressing that as well and clearing up some of the myths and just grounding us in a conversation that is factual and data-based. I think it's very easy to claim certain values, and it's a little bit harder to see how it practiced, and make sure that as we're having this conversation, we're thinking of how our experiences might be different from somebody else who has to navigate the world in the ways of what we don't. I speak English primarily, not Spanish, but I've gotten to build a relationship with so many, again, especially thinking of Cherokee Street and other areas where these are people who've been doing business in the community, have great business records, but there's literally a language barrier that just creates additional obstacles. We do have, crime rising around liquor vending establishments, and we do need to give the excise commissioner the authority he needs in order to ring those in. One of the first incidents I had to respond to as an alderperson was a bar within my ward that was causing a lot of problems and a lot of issues around safety for the neighborhood. And I did experience, there was definitely a lack of tools and resources that were urgently needed that we did not have in order to move quickly. So I think that this bill will fill in some of those gaps and will streamline some of those processes for the excise department so that we can have the public safety element and promote, great businesses and economic development within our communities and within our wards. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I do see there's a few other,
I have a quick question for Brett, if that's okay.
of course, proceed.
Thank you. Brett, do you expect any of these changes based on what you've proposed? Do you expect any of them to see an impact on public safety concerns around liquor license holders? And I know you kind of addressed that a bit opening, but
Absolutely.
I'm addressing the concerns that have come to me.
Absolutely. I think that when I've spoken with the excise commissioner, Commissioner McDonald, he indicated that how helpful this bill was going to be. There's what we have dubbed a cooling off period in the bill. And that means that when there's an incident of violence on or around any licensed premises, he has the sole authority to come in there and suspend that liquor license for 72 hours, up to 72 hours. When he suspends that, if the individual continues on, the building division will come and condemn that building. This means that when we've had issues where frankly, lawlessness outside of some of the nightclubs in particular, we don't see this as much outside restaurants so much as nightclubs. This would shut that down. And when you are making your money off your liquor licensing and you're having an incident once, twice, 3 times a week, and each time your liquor license is being suspended for 72 hours, pretty soon your liquor license is going to be suspended more of the month than it isn't suspended. And you're not going to be able to pay your bills. You're going to have to find a different line of work. And that's the way that we're going to do this. That 72 hours was pretty carefully considered, because what we were looking at is the amount of time that we could really look to suspend a license before someone would try and get what's called a preliminary injunction and say, hey, you're not allowed to suspend. Hold on for just 1 second. I have a dog barking here and I'm sure that's coming through. Sorry, it feels like the pandemic all over again. With the suspension of those liquor licenses, you're going to see these bad actors unable to do things like make rent and resupply. And we know that crime is a cat and mouse game, but we have to give the authorities, whether it's excise, whether it's SLMPD, whether it's the building division, we have to give them the tools to actually get out ahead of these things. And when we let Commissioner McDonald suspend these licenses for 72 hours in his discretion, that takes an incredible burden off him with what he has to do right now. Right now, he has to go through the circuit courts to revoke a license. That's his only option. Now that costs thousands of dollars, and for anyone who's been through the circuit court process, it also takes 24, 36 months in order to do that. And oftentimes while you're in that process, a judge will seek to preserve the status quo. And that means that letting that licensee continue to operate. Now, what this does is say, no, you don't get to operate, and we don't have to take it to that level. We're just going to suspend you over and over and over and over. And if you keep on having incidents, you're going to get suspended nonstop, and you're just not going to be able to do business. And if you continue to do business and ignore the fact that you're not operating with a proper licensure, the building will be condemned. This gives much stronger enforcement authority than what currently exists on the books. So I think there is a bit of a misunderstanding on the enforcement mechanism, that this is somehow making it easier for bad actors to operate. This makes it much harder for a bad actor to operate.
Thank you. And again, you spoke to this earlier, but I probably have at least 8 emails, and even in some of my conversations with constituents, I think some of the concern that I hear from people is they're nervous. And this is something I agree with. They're nervous that they're like, we don't want more convenience stores. We don't want more gas stations. We don't want to lose our community voice in the input. So I also just wanted to know if you could reemphasize the businesses that this applies to, and also talk about, reading through the bill. I know that there's still a protest petition process that still exists. So I think putting that on the record might be helpful as well.
Yeah, so there's a protest petition that exists. This only affects restaurants under 5,000 square feet that are doing more than 50% of their sales in food. And that's a pretty high number. If you talk to some restaurateurs, they'd say, oh man, if 50% in food is, that's high. Especially for kind of the sports bar type vibe. A lot of the beer sales have much higher markups than the food. This does not apply to a packaged liquor license, which is your gas station, your liquor store, your convenience store, your grocery store. This does not apply to a nightclub. You got to be doing your business in food, and this is for people who want to be able to sell a glass of wine with a meal, or sell a beer with a meal. This isn't for, even if the majority of your business is alcohol, this doesn't apply to you. If you have a large footprint, this doesn't apply to you. There are plenty of bars plenty of restaurants, that this will not apply to, because they're simply too large. There is there still is community input on this, both through the ability to engage in the protest petition, as well as the fact that the majority of these places are going to have to go through the conditional use process, particularly the places that people are most concerned about, which is the neighborhood residential, or the neighborhood business. And so if you're there, you have to go through the conditional use process, and then the various neighborhood stakeholders do get absolutely an opportunity to weigh in. I'm sure that you've been in front of that committee before, or seen that committee before, and or that board, I should say, and they're very sensitive to the concerns of neighborhood stakeholders and neighborhood associations and things like that, particularly when it comes to operating hours, the parking, the noise levels, amplified music, all of that. They absolutely take that into account, much more honestly than getting a signature for or opposed takes any of those concerns into account. and, you know, lastly, just anecdotally, I'll say, I've seen over the last, I guess, closing in on 5 years now, over and over, concerns with restaurant liquor licensing. And I won't even touch bars, nightclubs, packaged liquor, but with restaurants in particular, I've seen concerns. And people go, oh, I'm not sure about the liquor license here. Oh, what does this mean for the community? What is happening here? What's the effect of this going to be? A month and a half after they get their liquor license, those same people who were concerned that, you know, the sky may fall if this establishment can sell a glass of wine, they're the ones frequenting that establishment. And so I think that there's we need to look at this from a perspective of, we're giving the excise commissioner more authority, and then we are trying to make it easier for small business to operate. Like I said, if you're a Dave and Buster's or a, you know, one of those big chains, I guarantee you Top Golf will have no issue getting their liquor license. If they did, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. This is for you know, the small American dream family restaurant. And I want to be very clear about that. This is not for a gas station. It's not for a liquor store. It's not for a grocery store. It's not for a nightclub. This is for people who are selling food.
Thank you, Alderman.
Absolutely.
Okay, there are a couple of aldermen that are not on the committee that I do want to recognize if they want any input, but I do want to take just a quick point here. Alderman, can you really quickly explain the protest process currently and how under the proposed board bill, if there are any changes and what the big distinctions are?
Yeah, so the protest process currently, so basically right now when you're seeking to get a liquor license, there's kind of a dual track that's happening, because you're looking to get 51% of the signatures inside the plat, is what that radius is called. Now, if I live inside that plat and I don't want you to get a liquor license, I can start on another track where I'm essentially trying to get 51% of the signatures to oppose that liquor license. And so you have these dueling interests there, and it's essentially a race to 51%. So that remains under this proposed change, that protest petition changes. So a community organization or group of community stakeholders, or even an individual who opposed this, any individual proposed liquor license, could get 51% of the signatures inside that plat. And in fact, we've made the plat smaller to make it easier for a protest petition to try and succeed, because we realize that there's a you know, there aren't firms out there who are specializing in opposing the process. I'm sure if you talk to some of the firms right now who do it and you want to pay them money, they'll work to oppose it. But there isn't necessarily the same business interest in opposing them as there is in getting them done. So we've tried to very much keep that process in and say you can absolutely move to oppose this, and if you get the 51%, you have it, and then that liquor license will not go through.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Alderman.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. Alderman Aldridge, did you want to ask any questions or make a statement?
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
I think we can now.
Okay, it was a little choppy at first, but just wanted to thank you, Alderman Narayan, for bringing this board bill forward. I think this is a good conversation that we're having about the process of potentially what it looks like for small businesses to be able to open up. And I appreciate in your opening and throughout the committee, you made it very clear of who would benefit from potentially these the liquor license process. So it's not a gas station, it's not a nightclub. I've been getting several emails from residents, which I appreciate. Please continue to email me on this situation, but just being very clear on what this process will do. Since being in the city and running for office and now being an alderman, I've noticed how antiquated the city is and how hard it is, especially for our small businesses to sometimes operate and open up. And at the same time, I want to acknowledge a lot of the concerns that residents have of how do we make sure that we hold these businesses accountable. And you talked a lot about, how we're actually strengthening the process and how residents will still have a voice in the process. I know that has been a concern that people feel like it will take away from their voices from being able to petition against bad owners. So I just look forward to continuing to engage with this committee, listen to what's going on, get feedback from the residents. But I will say, I do think that the city has a lot of red tape when it comes to small business. So if there's a way we can alleviate some of that stress for them, but also ensure that residents still have input will be major. So thank you. And I look forward to continuing to listen as the process moves forward.
Thank you, Alderman. Okay, I do see the Alderman from the 9th, Alderman Browning. Any statement or questions of sponsor? Perhaps he's just in a listening session. Do raise your hand though, Alderman, if you feel you want to contribute. Excellent. Okay, with that, Madam Clerk, I'd like to move toward the public speaking and citizen testimony.
I have James Page. I'm about to move over.
Oh, JP. The name sounds familiar.
Okay, Mr. Page, if you could bring up your video for me. Okay, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Yes, my name is James Page, and I represent the St. Louis Downtown Neighborhood Association, and I would like to go on record in opposition to Board Bill 60. President, Board of Aldermen, Chair, Special Committee on Reducing Red Tape, and members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to express my opposition to Board Bill 60. If passed, Board Bill 60 will be disastrous for the residents of St. Louis's neighborhoods. Why? Board Bill 60 will create a new classification of restaurant bars and will effectively eliminate neighborhood approval via plat and petition process for that category of businesses. The mechanism for determining whether an establishment qualifies as a restaurant bar will be very easy to evade and impossible to enforce. Holders of existing liquor licenses will have complete freedom to relocate anywhere within the city without neighborhood approval. Effective application of the intended ordinance will require a robust excise division, which with a much larger staff with significantly greater resources and capabilities. Board Bill 60 provides no assurances of funding for increased excise division resources and capabilities. Residents who find it necessary to protest liquor licenses will have to collect more signatures from a larger area to register their protests. For these and other reasons, residents of many neighborhoods and I have serious concerns about Board Bill 60 as written. Board of Aldermen, please do not destroy the safety, security, and quality of life in our neighborhoods by passing Board Bill 60 as written. Hardworking, tax-paying, peace-loving St. Louis families deserve to have a say in permitting the sale of alcohol, a controlled substance, in their neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Tracy, who's next? Tracy? Who do we have next on the list?
I apologize. Jenny McDonald, who is in support of Board Bill 60.
Oh, I see her on the screen. Oh, there you are.
Ms. McDonald, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Good morning, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Velasquez, and members of the committee. My name is Jenny McDonald, and I direct the Institute for Justice's Cities Work Initiative. As you all know, the Institute for Justice is a national nonprofit that advocates for entrepreneurs across the country. Our Cities Work Initiative partners with cities to make it cheaper, faster, and simpler to start a small business. We are grateful for this committee's partnership as we work to achieve that goal in St. Louis. I'm here today to testify in support of BB 60 and to recommend amendments that would further strengthen the bill's ability to make the liquor licensing process more accessible for all St. Louis residents. Starting a restaurant or bar in St. Louis can be a daunting experience for anyone, but especially for the city's most vulnerable residents. The process for getting up and running is bogged down by steep fees, protracted delays, and bureaucratic complexity. Entrepreneurs often receive little guidance on how and in what order to complete steps to get their liquor license, forcing them to hire expensive attorneys and advisors to help them navigate the process. Hardworking St. Louis residents deserve to have the ability to go out for a meal in their communities. And if restaurants are not allowed to sell alcohol, those restaurants are much less likely to be able to turn a profit and be able to stay afloat in the neighborhoods where residents most want to be able to enjoy a meal with their family. We are delighted that the city is proactively attempting to reduce those regulatory barriers by introducing this bill. We urge the committee to adopt BB 60 and to make the recommended amendments to make it stronger. There's been a lot of talk this morning about the plat petition process. And while we understand that communities want input in what types of businesses are able to operate and sell alcohol in their neighborhoods, I just wanted to highlight how burdensome and particularly dangerous and inequitable the current plat petition process is for people of color and people living in low-income neighborhoods. It can be extremely burdensome, if not impossible, to achieve the necessary signatures in order to apply for your liquor license. And what this bill does is, instead of that plat petition process, it creates a process where there's a hearing about the liquor license, but it doesn't remove the community's ability to gather their own signatures to oppose the liquor license. This bill would change the burden of, essentially the burden of proof that would be required to get a liquor license, and provide an opportunity for those small businesses that we've talked about this morning to be able to compete with the big chains. There's been a lot of other things that have been talked about this morning as well. And I think pointing out that this bill creates additional enforcement mechanisms for the excise commissioner is key, because a lot of the concerns that folks have about this bill or about liquor licensing in general is that there are bad actors who don't follow the rules. So by giving the commissioner additional resources and additional authority to enforce the liquor licensing laws is a great way to make sure that we weed out the bad actors without harming the small businesses that are doing the right thing. I'd also like to point out that the bill provides.
We're at time. We're just past 3 minutes.
I apologize. I just want just one more thing.
Go ahead and finish up. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. The bill provides people with important due process protections so that they can make sure that they have, the due process that they're guaranteed under law. Because when you take away someone's liquor license or you don't give them a liquor license in the first place, that can have devastating effects on their restaurant's ability to stay afloat. And I think we would all agree that we want more small independent restaurants downtown rather than the big chains that we're all used to. Something that hasn't been talked about yet this morning is that this bill would make it easier for people with unrelated criminal histories to get a liquor license. So the current law prohibits somebody with a felony conviction from obtaining a liquor license or even working in an establishment that sells alcohol, even when that conviction is completely unrelated to selling alcohol. So this bill would eliminate that blanket prohibition that most unfairly targets people of color, lower income residents, and other people with criminal histories from just trying to get back on their feet.
Okay, Jenny, I'm gonna plug you there.
Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And I just wanted to say again, thank you to Chairman Alderman Narayan for bringing this bill forward.
And thank you, Jenny. The Institute of Justice is helping the Special Committee on Reducing Red Tape in a variety of capacities. So I appreciate your testimony here today and the work that you're helping with.
Thank you.
Let's see, Madam Clerk, who is next?
We have Matt O'Leary, who is in opposition.
Certainly.
Mr. O'Leary, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Oldenburg and the Red Tape Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. I am a downtown resident and have been downtown for 25 years. I've been very involved in liquor licensing issues for that entire period of time and have personally participated in probably 20 protests against problem liquor licenses. There's been a lot of discussion given to Club Rain, which I was involved in closing, but Club Rain was just the worst example of problems we've been experiencing downtown for my entire 25-year period of time. I support the testimony made by former Alderman James Page and wanted to build on some specific concepts that he raised and respond to comments that have been made by the sponsors. Number one, on protests. Protests are hard. When I protested Club Lure, we had to get over 120 signatures. Under Board Bill 60, we'd probably have to get 400 signatures. That is because Board Bill 60 does a couple things. Number one, it takes the 350-foot circle for protests and expands it to 500 feet, which is the same circle size for 3 a.m. liquor licenses. Also, downtown has a lot of multi-story buildings. Currently, there are restrictions on who can sign based upon floors. Board Bill 60 removes that. So basically, every unit owner in a condo in a downtown building now has signature rights. That's not relevant related to restaurant bars obtaining signatures because they don't have to, but it absolutely impacts protests. Protests will essentially become illusory tools under Board Bill 60. Number two, the cooling off period might be slightly useful if there was enforcement. I'll talk about that in a second, but a lot of the clubs like Rain only operate a couple nights a week. Losing their license for 72 hours will likely do little, if anything, to deter their bad behavior. Rain, for instance, lost its license for weeks at a time for violating COVID restrictions, and they stayed in operation, devastating the neighborhood for another year. As it relates to the 50% food sales with the $200,000 minimum, while that's a nice concept, there is no requirement for any proof to be supplied related to that. The ordinance provides for an attestation by the licensee as to their food sales. It's not based upon sales taxes. It's not based upon any verifiable item. Restaurant or licensees are constantly misrepresenting themselves as restaurants when they're actually operating nightclubs. I don't think they're likely to be going to be completely truthful related to their food sales. We need something that is objective, not just based upon the attestation of a licensee. Another
Your time.
part, uh,
Go ahead, Matt, I'll extend another 45 seconds. So let's just do that, Alderwoman Vasquez. So we're keeping this fair, that we allowed Jenny some extra time. Let's just allow everyone 3 minutes and 45 seconds going forward.
thank you. Last point
And
is
there'll
that
be
there's
a
been a
hard
lot of,
cutoff.
sorry, Alderman.
No, go ahead, sir.
There's been a lot of discussion about the giving the excise commissioner additional power as a useful component of this. The problem is the excise commissioner does little with the power he has. There's very little enforcement that comes out of that office. Even Club Rain was shut down via a nuisance process, not via an excise process, despite the chaos they caused. Unless this bill provides resources to the excise commissioner and holds him accountable for doing his job, I don't expect that additional enforcement is going to be in the offing. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Joseph Kelly, who is in support of Board Bill 60. Mr. Kelly, I see that you're on. I need you to show your video and unmute for me.
That, am I on now?
Yes, I just need your video.
Yeah,
Okay.
I apologize for that. I'll be very brief.
Hold on,
sorry.
I'm gonna have to swear you in.
Right.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Thank you. You may proceed.
I appreciate the opportunity. Sorry for the mishap there at the beginning. I agree with Mr. O'Leary 100% and Mr. Page. I did chat that I am in support of part of it. And I see the enforcement part of it on the back end, giving more power to the excise commissioner and enforcing, bad operators. I think that is a good thing. My concern is on the front end. Well, first of all, just briefly my history. We work with applicants with liquor license applications in the city of St. Louis and the surrounding municipalities. I've been doing this for about 35 years. We handle about 50 to 60 applications in the city of St. Louis a year and about 50 or 60 outside the city of St. Louis a year. My concern is with a new application for a restaurant in the city of St. Louis, eliminating the petition process, which I'm not necessarily in favor of the petition process, but by eliminating that, you may have a new business coming in, applying for a liquor license, getting approved, spending the money to build a small restaurant, tens of thousands of dollars or perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then if they do not meet the sales requirements after a certain period of time, it's up to the excise office to audit the business. If the audit doesn't work out in the restaurant's favor, do they get closed down? So you're maybe giving an opportunity to places that may not technically qualify. And I think there would be difficulty enforcing the restaurant qualifications. So that's my concern, that folks are going to apply for liquor licenses saying that they're a restaurant, knowing that they're not going to be, and then saying, hey, catch me if you can. That's a concern. Also, eliminating the petition process completely. I see going into an application hearing with perhaps an applicant, the excise commissioner, and perhaps a few people from the neighborhood that are opposed to it. Now you're leaving the decision solely up to the excise commissioner or perhaps some sort of panel that's created to make the decision for a certain neighborhood that they may not be a part of. So by having a petition process is basically democracy at its finest, giving one vote to qualified voters in that particular neighborhood, saying what they want in their neighborhood. I think that's important for all neighborhoods throughout the city of St. Louis. And if the alderperson or the board wants more, I know our time's limited here, but if they want to speak more about this petition process, I know I spoke with a couple of the aldermen that are on the panel here just briefly, but I'd be more than happy to sit down and share our experiences in circulating this petition and in a little bit more detail if they're interested, and I'd be more than happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay. The next person I have to speak is Victor Madison. who is in opposition of Board Bill number 60? Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thanks to everyone for letting me participate in this and for holding this public hearing. First, I want to applaud Alderman Narayan and the others who are trying to find ways to make St. Louis a more inviting place to open a business and ways to make our processes simpler. We absolutely need to do that. I've worked in downtown St. Louis, specifically on the Cleves Landing, for 23 years, and I've owned several properties in the city for a long time. In addition, I'm presently doing a gut remodel of the Morgan Street Brewery, the 4 buildings that make up Morgan Street Brewery. In general, I found it very easy to operate here in the city, and that the staff of the city has been very, very accommodating and helpful, and that's the way it should be. St. Louis is a really special place, as we all know, and I think it could easily be at a breakthrough moment where we see St. Louis become the place that we know that it could and should be. Unfortunately, without a doubt, the 2 biggest problems that are impeding that growth are the problems of crime and unhoused. And with the challenges and solutions surrounding though those that surround the unhoused population are very complex, the other issue of crime is one that could be made substantially, although imperfectly, better with 2 real straightforward efforts, avoidance in the first place and compliance. And the issue here we're talking about now is avoidance, in my opinion. In an effort to make things easier, which is great, we are making the process easier. We're making it easier for people to get a liquor license that, as others have said, would be almost impossible, or certainly very difficult to do something about. Remember that when you apply for a liquor license, most of these businesses are new businesses. And that means that when they're saying that they're going to be a 5,000 foot restaurant or a 3,000 or whatever it is, and their revenue mix is going to be X, Y, or Z, that's based on pro formas. That's based on their plan. That's based on a business plan and a spreadsheet. That's the best thing that they've been able to come up with at that time. The average size of a restaurant that's opening today is between 2,000 and 3,000 feet. So this would apply to virtually all restaurants, not just some. There are not a whole lot of new 5,000 foot restaurants that are opening up. And Alderman Narayan, I think your desire is really noble, and I support the idea. I support the concept that you're trying to get done. The issue is that many of these people that are choosing not to open up or remain in the city are not doing it because of the difficulty of getting a liquor license. They're doing it because of the crime problem. They're doing it because they can't get the demand to support their business because of the perception, at least, and in many cases, the reality of crime and the reality of, I'm redoing these buildings, trying to attract some of these same tenants that we were talking about wanting to get. So I'm all for making it easier. But when someone's coming to look at our building and we've got, newspaper articles about shootings, and we've got, they're stepping around 30 or 40 people in a homeless camp across the street from the buildings that we're trying to do, that's the issue, not that the liquor license is difficult. I've been involved in probably 15, 20 different liquor license processes, and it really does not have to be that difficult. It is not that cumbersome. It's not easy, but to be real honest, if the issue—
You're at time.
Thank you. Is that 3:45 or 3?
That was 3:45.
All right. I'll finish up quickly in saying that I think that the streamlining is great. That should be done, but it's simply a bad idea to make this easy and let people open up businesses unvetted that then cause huge problems. And one last thing, I'm sorry for running late, but Alderman Ryan, you
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to stop you there, Mr. Madison. We
Thank
have to proceed. We have 7 other speakers.
All right. The idea that a building owner would
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Madison,
Thank you, sir.
condemned is scary.
thank you.
Who's next, Tracy?
We have Miss Carolyn, who is speaking in favor. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, Caroline Fan, founder and president of the Missouri Asian American Youth Foundation, speaking in favor of the bill in order to reduce barriers for immigrant entrepreneurs and small mom and pop business owners. As many of you know, I worked closely with many of the U City businesses who were in the Olive and 170 footprint. Many of them wound up moving to the city. And in the city, you know, I think it can overall, right? I'm not a restaurateur. I'm a very avid eater. Have really enjoyed watching the St. Louis food scene increase in size, scope, and also national presence in the 9 years I've lived here. But it can be very difficult to get a liquor license. And for some mom and pop and immigrant owned restaurants, it is literally the difference between staying open and closing. So I think most of you, if not all of you, have seen the Riverfront Times piece that talks about Chicken 7 and how it took them over 2.5 years. And at the point that they were interviewed, they still had not had a liquor license. So I don't actually know how long it took them to get a liquor license, much less if they ever got one. But the National Association of Restaurants says that most restaurants actually fail within 2 years, right? So about 60% of restaurants fail in their first year of operation, 80% fail within 5 years of opening. As I've noted, our incredible food scene has been noted by Food and Wine, by Eater.com. And a delay like this, I think, really only increases restaurateur frustration. And there's the perception, right, that the current process is highly corrupt. I don't know if it actually is. Again, all I do at restaurants is eat. But the city is already under the microscope for corruption. And even if it's just the perception, right, then it leads folks to not necessarily want to locate in the city. And the difficulty with that, and again, I very much admit that I have a stomach self-interest in this, is that the tax base is actually drastically shrinking, right? And if you look at the bill, and the bill is very long, and I read it last night, part of the other issue is that apparently due to a state statute, you must be a registered voter in the state to apparently be a liquor license holder, which to me is fairly nonsensical and discriminatory. A lot of immigrants and refugees who move here, one of the few skills that they have is being able to cook. Right. So the Afghani chamber started, like, folks are really excited to try to, you know, make some money and contribute back to the society here, but then they have to be a registered voter. By the way, Illinois does not have this. So, you know, we are not just a global economy, but a regional economy. And so there are folks who live in Illinois who maybe have interests here, interests there. Like, I don't understand this. Secondly, one could also just be a US citizen and not want to register to vote. And then would they not be allowed to own a liquor license or open an establishment that serves liquor? Seems very nonsensical. A lot of the language in this bill, it's 120 pages, not including the addendum, which cites the previous language, is really, really antiquated. So I think one thing that we can all agree on is that there do need to be some updates and reforms and modernizations, because there's literally language in there that prevents people from dancing in an establishment.
We're at time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You're on mute.
We have Dan Pister, who is in opposition of Board Bill 60. Mr. Pister, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may begin.
All right, thank you. I am a 16-year resident of downtown and the chair of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. I've also chaired the Downtown Neighborhood Association Safety Committee for 7 or 8 years, dealing with a lot of liquor licensing matters that we've seen a lot of issues with here in downtown. We've had issues with bars, restaurants, nightclubs, most notably in 2021, when a liquor license holder caused many residents to move out of the area. And for the ones that could not move out of the area, they were forced with a nightmare quality of life situation that they had to live through. Many of those people that I heard from during that time were working class individuals nurses, EMTs, teachers that lived right above or across the street that simply had to get sleep and had to get to their job during their time of work. Many could not, like I said, many could not break their lease, and they took a hit to their credit, and the ones that did took a hit to their credit, costing lasting damage to their living situation. My issues with the bill are in conjunction with Mr. Page and Mr. O'Leary. It removes the say of the residents that are in that area by eliminating plat petition for a certain category. That category, which is restaurant and bars, will be almost impossible to enforce due to the current staffing levels of excise, and it'll be extremely easy to evade. If somebody is near that threshold, they could plug in an $8 cocktail as an $8 appetizer. And if the excise commissioner is not comparing their sales receipts and the purchases they made from the distributor, they'll easily evade that situation. So you'll get people that are saying that they're a restaurant, but are actually a bar or again, the protest process will be almost impossible. You can relocate anywhere in the city. So I could open a bar or a nightclub in the North Riverfront and then move it to Dogtown or Boulevard Heights, and they can't say anything about it. It also gives the excise authority to police without saying anything on how that's going to happen. There's no allocation for funding, for better staff, for better technology. Where's that all going to come from? There's a couple of myths. One, that it costs tens of thousands to go through the liquor license process. The fact is it costs $550 for the application and the plat. If they want to get a consultant to do that legwork for them, they're looking maybe at another additional couple thousand dollars. That burden is still extremely low. It's too hard for minority residents to obtain a license. The fact is that in downtown and downtown west, outside of Union Station and Ballpark Village, 5 out of the 6 licensees granted in that area were minority-owned businesses. So I don't see where that's coming from. The barriers of entry, another myth, the barriers of entry in this city are too high. Compare our barriers of entry to other cities like Miami, Nashville, and New York City, and they are extremely low compared to those cities. As Alderwoman Spencer indicated, in suburban areas, it's easier to obtain a license. Well, their commercial thoroughfares are separated from their residential living quarters. So here in the city, it's much different, where people are living right above those areas. Alderman Narayan stated that there's nowhere to eat downtown because of this situation. However, there are more restaurants and bars downtown than any other area in the city. That includes downtown Clayton as well. It has been mentioned that there's issues with people going door to door.
It's the next time.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pfister.
We have, pardon me. We have Miss, oh no.
I saw him pop up for a second. Oh, there he is.
Oh, there you go. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much to Mr. Oldenburg and Mr. Orion for your excellent work with bringing this issue up. My name is Ono Akanone, as mentioned earlier. I am the owner of Levels Nigerian Cuisine. We officially opened up July 1st of 2023. We applied for our liquor license in December of 2022, and we weren't able to get the liquor license till June of 23. We had to go through the process, so I can speak firsthand on how rigorous the process is. We had to go through the door-to-door plat petition process, which on one hand, it helped us meet the community, but on the other hand, we faced some difficulties with individuals labeling us as a club before we were able to show what we were able to do or what we are doing. So we've been operating for 2 months now, and we've been able to have community geared events for International Institute St. Louis. We've done things for African Youth of St. Louis. We've done a few fundraisers, and I think that we're bringing some good to the downtown area. But my path to getting getting the liquor license was not an easy one, and I don't think part of it was very unfair. To begin with, I had the opportunity of getting a consultant, which cost more than a couple $100. It cost closer to $4,000. And for a business that is not bringing in any funds yet, no revenue, no profit, of course, because we weren't open yet. But even if we were, that would take a major hit to our bottom line. And I'm sure not every business is able to afford that. Also, there was a negative spin to our narrative as to what we were going to do as a business, even to where my personal Instagram was pulled up to show that we were going to operate as a club. And that was posted on YouTube without my permission, without any consulting with me about who I am or what I have to bring to the table. And that was immediately posted to the public saying that this is what we're bringing to the community. I feel like with our meetings with city officials and community leaders, we were able to show who we are and what we're bringing. However, I think that makes it extremely difficult and problematic in the sense of people labeling you as something that you're not. As regards to the door-to-door process with getting signatures, I personally think that in this day and age, that is very, very dangerous. As a father of a young child, I can only imagine somebody coming to knock on my door at any time of the day asking for a signature. Because I understand their plight, I will sign, but I know that that could be dangerous to Black and brown people or anyone in general. So that's something that I think should be considered as well. And that's why I am for the bill BB60. I can answer any other questions. Personally, I feel like us owning the building is what helped out a lot with us being able to open. I feel like if we didn't own the building or we didn't have access to funds to get a consultant, we wouldn't have a liquor license at this time. So I'm in support of BB60.
Thank you. Next, I have Pat Accusto. Pat Accusto. It says she's
Acquisito, I think.
Oh, there she goes. There he goes.
Pat, are you there?
I need you to unmute and turn your video on for me.
There she goes.
Okay.
Sorry, I had some trouble when it converted over.
No problem. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm the president of the Lindenwood Park Neighborhood Association. And I'm opposed to the bill as it stands now, particularly plat and petition. Our neighborhood has nothing but mom and pop restaurants and businesses. We have no, except for fast food, we have no chain restaurants. So all of these people were able to get their licenses and they're performing very successfully as businesses. I myself have had to go through the plat and petition process. I didn't find it burdensome. I think if you're going to go into business, you need to take these expenses into consideration. Perhaps there's someone who, organizations that you can get grants to help you with this. But as a neighborhood association, anytime a new business goes in, we talk to the surrounding residents to make sure they don't have a problem with this business, that, they're okay with it. We just try to nip it in the bud if we don't want problems. With liquor licenses, we don't have to worry about it because we know there's a process in place that already takes care of that. If this is taken away, that puts the burden on us as a neighborhood to go to these residents, find out if they have a problem with it, go back to the business. It just puts us in a bad position where we have to be the go-between, because people always have a problem if there's liquor involved. They want some assurances because that's where the problems are with the businesses that hold liquor licenses. If you can't get a liquor license because of one or two people holding it back, then I guess you need to question why that's happening. I mean, people don't want businesses to go in that are going to cause a problem. I think when you talk about downtown, the reason that you're not getting businesses opening downtown is because of crime. It's a problem everywhere in the city that's not being dealt with, and we need to look at that. Also, when you're talking about bringing businesses into the city. And I mean, I don't want to deny a business ever, but I also want a lot of consideration given to the residents, which I'm not hearing in this whole process. I hear about how easy we want to make it for the businesses, but as far as putting the safety and welfare of the neighborhood in the hands of the excise department, I don't think that's going to work. We already have problems with the city enforcing codes that are already in place, and I don't see this being any different. Thank you.
Thank you. I have next, Miss Danny.
Eichenhorst.
Eichenhorst.
Okay.
Yeah. Eichenhorst, yeah.
No problem. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
Okay, you may proceed.
Awesome. I just wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity to testify. In April of this year, a number of us came together just asking for change to this process because it is burdensome, prohibitive, it actively disadvantages many small businesses. And honestly, it just limits investment in the city of St. Louis. And I'm thankful that the city was quick to respond with great ideas and forward motion, but I'm mostly thankful that we've got people from neighborhoods and who are impacted in different ways to come to the table today to submit their thoughts on this legislation. At the end of the day, we all want to see the city thrive. The city of St. Louis has already become a destination, as Caroline said, for food in this country. And what I hope that we're asking in the course of all of this is, how do we encourage investment in the city of St. Louis? How do we lower the barriers of entry for entrepreneurs while also protecting our communities? As somebody who has worked in government and community outreach, who now sits on the board of multiple neighborhood committees and owns multiple restaurants, I see all sides of this bill. And I'm thankful that you're taking the time to hear neighborhood perspectives in addition to restaurant owners. I would say that this is a really critical moment for the city of St. Louis and neighborhoods and restaurant owners, in that you have an opportunity to lower that barrier of entry. But in this moment, a lot of these neighborhoods have had to be in a defensive position because of the lack of enforcement that they've felt the brunt of over the years. So I think that it's really, really important that we are crystal clear about what's going to happen on the enforcement side. Why are things not being enforced right now? And if the bill was passed right now, do the resources and staff, are they in place? Are the rules clear? What are the unintended consequences of the legislation that we're proposing? How many violations does it take to get to condemnation? In a multi-unit building where a restaurant is leasing, how might this impact other tenants or the building owner? By putting a piece of legislation out there that maybe would condemn a building, does that cause building owners to not rent to potential restaurant owners because of the risk? I think this is an awesome start. I just want to encourage you guys to continue to have these conversations and dig into the idea of unintended consequences. And ideally, also, I wanted to just share, I'm a member of multiple different large masterminds of restaurant owners. And when it comes to setting your minimum at 50% in food sales, it's a good start. But typically restaurants operate at 70% food sales or more. So when you're considering, putting all these rules and measurements into place, making sure that they're accurate so that they really do reflect a restaurant and not a bar would be important. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next, I have Jim Dyer.
Yes, here I am.
Okay, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for the opportunity to weigh in on this important matter. The objective of streamlining government is laudable and should be encouraged and pursued aggressively in many arenas. Regarding the subject matter and intended purpose of Board Bill 60, it is widely acknowledged that the liquor license application process has been intolerably protracted in recent years and must be addressed. That was not always the case. So the logical first step should be to determine what has changed to cause these unacceptable delays and how best to address and correct the underlying cause. The fundamental question is what is broken and what needs to be fixed. Regrettably, the remedy as proposed in Board Bill 60 fails to target the underlying issue, which is the process of verifying petition signatures, not the gathering of them. The longstanding procedure of soliciting signatures in support of a liquor license application, which has served also as a forum for expressing opposition, was established for good reason and, until recently, functioned effectively for many years. The sale of alcoholic beverages is a privilege that is subject to well-established standards. Neighborhood approval via a majority vote of those most directly affected by the proposed operation is a reasonable condition to the issuance of a liquor license. That was determined to be appropriate when the current system was adopted and continues to be so today. The established process presents the applicant with an opportunity to present his or her credentials to the community, and the community with the opportunity to evaluate and weigh in on the merits and desirability of the proposed business. That engagement also allows for the negotiation of a good neighbor agreement, which can serve to identify concerns and address potential conflicts in advance and reduce those matters to a formal agreement that can establish ground rules for a successful relationship with the community. That is something we have done frequently in the Central West End, and it has proven to be a valuable tool. To eliminate that well-established practice, as proposed in Board Bill 60, is tantamount to disenfranchising the residential interests in favor of simplifying the process for the applicant. That is a misdirected, one-sided, quote, solution that fails to address valid community interests while also ignoring the reality of the underlying issue, that is, the unacceptable delays in processing applications, is an administrative matter attributable at least in part to insufficient staffing in the Excise Commissioner's office, and not with the time-honored system of circulating a petition for signature by neighbors. Addressing the processing of petition signatures is where the focus should be. As currently drafted, Board Bill 60 should not be passed out of committee in its present form and should be replaced by a more targeted solution to the real issue. Thank you for your consideration, and I'll yield my extra 45 seconds to anyone else who is opposed to this bill in its present form.
Thank you. Next, I have Jeremy Salvatore. Jeremy Salvatore. I'm going to need you to unmute and start your video. Dana Gray.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
My keyboard was locked up here for a second.
Okay, no problem. Hold on a moment, I have to swear you in. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Jeremy Salvatore. I am the building manager for the Globe Building. We're located at Tucker and Convention Boulevard. We're a 550,000 square foot mixed use office data center. And high-tech commercial building. We have been growing rapidly, even since the pandemic, especially with geospatial intelligence companies, and have been attracting a lot of businesses from that have a national presence out of state, including companies like General Dynamics, which just put signage on our building. And despite that, one of the biggest problems we have with new tenancies, bringing more jobs here and more tenancies, more revenue to the city, is the perception and reality of crime, especially, and one of the causes of that are these rogue liquor license operators, the rogue nightclub operators, and the fact that I don't believe the excise division has the funding and resources to shut down the problem operators. We are located right around the corner from where Copia was, and significant problems came out of that establishment. I met with police many times to have them review our surveillance camera recordings for evidence after shootings, assaults, and homicides that came from that establishment. And that establishment was eventually shut down, but it wasn't even by the excise department. I believe it was through private nuisance lawsuits. And so as someone who's trying to lease up more space, generally I'm for less government red tape. And so it's unusual here for me to be advocating for both more control by the excise division over liquor licenses, and also perhaps even more funding for this government department. I don't believe that reckless deregulation is going to be the cure for the problems that have been noted earlier. Lack of investment in the city. I don't think deregulation is the issue. I think the issue is crime, the perception of crime, and the problems associated with these rogue operators. And that I believe this bill needs, I believe there's a good concept behind it, which is make it easier to do business. But it needs to go back to the drawing board to figure out how to do it in a way that actually results in enforcement and the shutting down of bad operators while letting the good ones in. And I will release whatever time I have remaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Dana Gray.
Hi, this is Dana Gray. My video, oh, there you go. Start my video.
Thank you. Ms. Gray, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you may proceed. Thank you.
Sure. I wanted to echo the sentiments that were shared by Jim Dwyer. I am a resident of the Southwest Garden neighborhood, and we have successfully negotiated with restaurants that have come in to ensure that the relationship with the residents surrounding the property was a positive one. And I don't want to see that process eliminated. I do want to support anything that helps new businesses open, but want to see that accomplished without eliminating neighborhoods being able to have a voice in the process. That's all.
Okay, that concludes public testimony.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Great. At this time, I would like to defer to any other committee members if they have any statements of response potentially to what they've heard. I do want to not necessarily engage in a back and forth, but I do want to allow any of the committee members a chance to again, make any kind of a statement of response or wrap any final thoughts up. So just raise your hand if any committee member would like to have a few more words. Go ahead, Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just say thank you to everyone for weighing in. I've gotten so many emails and calls about this legislation. You know, again, I think anything that we can do to break down barriers for businesses is really, really helpful. So lauding the sponsor on that, but I really thought that the testimony was very thoughtful. The concerns are very valid, and I look forward to working with everyone to finding a path forward here. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for holding this hearing today. And thank you for everyone for testifying.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Saunier, proceed.
Hey, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming this morning and after getting near the afternoon now to share your perspectives and your viewpoints. This is the community engagement process, and I'm so grateful for each of you who took the time today. Could have been doing anything else. So I just appreciate the variety of perspectives and opinions in the room. I did hear, a lot of words and comments, and I think there is a common agreement amongst all of us that the system in place right now does not work and there needs to be some changes. I shared my concerns earlier about some of the subjectivity and arbitrary application of some of our current systems that has negatively impacted Black and Brown business owners. I also heard a lot of concerns about other issues that I think the Special Red Tape Committee definitely has to talk about in regards to public safety and specifically in regards to crime and enforcement. We heard a lot of comments specifically from our downtown residents and business owners, and I'm so thankful for you all coming because I think you're a critical part of this conversation, and I think the city has been working to address some of those concerns, like some of the recent almost $1 million in funding that's going to be going to additional policing that will be used just for the downtown area. And I also heard mention of the unhoused, and I think as a city we're also going to be starting soon to have conversation about it, what it looks like to eliminate some of the red tape barriers that exist for our current unhoused providers that are there. So I just wanted to, clarify that point as I read it in the comments and make sure that we're just all operating in the same reality where the excise division does not have what they need right now and that we are trying to get them to where they need to be. I also keep hearing an ongoing comment of the petition process being removed. So I want to reaffirm, as the sponsor of the bill said, that is not true, that the petition process still does exist. And I see a lot of comments about the lack of enforcement for our exist because of understaffing. And I think that's why it does make sense to make sure that the commissioner has the power that he needs to come in and address these issues when they arise. In closing, I just want to be clear that I am in support of this process that we'll go through as a committee to address this legislation and to get it to where it needs to be, to a point that best works for all of us. And I do want to emphasize that it is all of us, that this is not just going to be a bill that just impacts downtown or just impacts any one of our wards, but it's going to impact our entire community and what we have the ability to become. I know it's going to be long, it's going to be challenging, and I don't want the length of the process to be misled or for it to feel like we're rushing this process. And I want to commend Alderman Narayan again for not rushing this process and making sure, and the chair, that we continue to do the robust community engagement that we have to do. Good policy is nuanced and it's detailed, but I do think that this bill is good policy and that ultimately it will remove the burdensome, expensive process that is prohibitive for small businesses to plan and grow here in the city.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other members of the committee? Wrap up final thoughts. Okay. Oh, sorry. We'll go back to the sponsor. Alderman.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to thank everyone who took the time out of their day to weigh in on this and begin a conversation on this. I know that sometimes bills move very fast through committee. I know that when I've spoken to, the chairman here, Alderman Oldenburg, both of us have been pretty clear that we don't want this to be a rush job. We understand the importance of getting this right. And that, frankly, we're probably closer to the beginning of the conversation than the end of the conversation right now. And that's what good legislation takes a lot of times, is making sure that you're hearing from as many people as you can and taking things into account. This is kind of the first bite at the apple. I look forward to hearing from the commissioner on the 11th. And I think at that point, we may also have some amendments to bring. I think there were some interesting points raised today. And I look forward to continuing the conversation, and I would encourage anyone, whether they were on this call or whether they're catching this later on YouTube or whatever, to be in attendance on the 11th and make sure that your voice is heard, not only on the bill overall, but on any of the proposed changes that we're looking at. Because ultimately, this is a change to the way that St. Louis has been doing business for a long time. And we want to make sure we get this right. I think everyone, either for or against this, seem to have recognized that there's some need to update this process. And so, now we're just looking at trying to find where that sweet spot is. And I feel confident if we continue to work on this together, whether for or opposed, that we'll be able to find a place that this works for both everyone who lives or works in the city of St. Louis, as well as those who are trying to start new businesses and bring revenue into the city of St. Louis. This is a major change, but it's also something that could bring in a lot of revenue. And when we talk about things like public safety, like crime, having more people on our streets, that tends to help with those crime numbers. And certainly having more revenue tends to help with having the ability to patrol more and the ability to enforce currently existing laws more. So I look forward to working with you all as we move forward. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alderman. Next, by way of agenda, there's no resolutions, no committee discussions, acknowledgement of written testimony. If anyone on the public is still on, please note that you can provide written testimony. The clerk is cataloging all of those, and they are in the Google Drive for members of the committee and others to see, to ensure that those are a matter of record. Announcements. The only announcement I have is to remind everyone that there will be another public hearing on this very issue, September 11th at 6 p.m. and we're finalizing the location, but that will be a on-site in a community, in a neighborhood, so that we can draw folks who couldn't make this hearing, because as the sponsor noted, this is an important issue. We want to hear from everyone. And good legislation takes a good myriad of perspectives that this committee needs to hear. I also want to thank all the committee members for their work on this as we move forward. Vice Chair, you have something?
Just want to say, if you didn't, if I missed it, that the next meeting will be held in the evening too. We're looking at an evening time in person.
Correct. Yeah, I think 6 p.m. is the slated time, but yeah, an evening meeting again. So we're diversifying our time here. That understandable that 10 a.m. on a Wednesday doesn't always work for a good sector of our community. So evening meeting will be the next one, September 11th. Stay tuned for more details on the precise location. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for excused alderman. The alderman for the 11th does have an excused absence.
So moved.
Second, perfect. All right. Madam Clerk, anything else? With that, we will seek adjournment.
No, we can go ahead and adjourn.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all.